Welcome to the Explainer. So, what if I told you there was a way to build a kind of legal fortress around your assets, making them almost untouchable? Well, today we're diving into a framework from a course called Administrative Protection of Children and Property, and it claims to show you exactly how to do that using something called a private trust. So, let's see what this is all about. All right, so the whole idea we're exploring today kicks off with a pretty big question. When it comes to your own property, your own stuff, are you really in control? According to this framework, for most of us, the answer is, well, it's a surprising no. At least not in the way you probably think you are. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. It's kind of like a 5-part journey. We're going to start by looking at this hidden problem they call the default public trust. Then we'll talk about the ignition key that's supposed to fix it. After that, we'll get into building a powerful dossier of documents, see how to go on the record with it. And finally, we'll explore what they call the administrative payoff, the whole point of taking back control. All right, first things first, what is the big problem we're even trying to solve here? Well, according to this system, almost all of us are, without even knowing it, part of something called a default public trust. You can think of it like, I don't know, an invisible net that's just kind of operating in the background, affecting your assets when you don't even realize it's there. So this framework basically lays out 2 different roads you can be on. The default road, that's the implied public trust. And it's kind of like you're just a passenger in a car and someone else is driving. But then there's the other path, the activated private trust. This is where you decide to grab the steering wheel yourself, making your control totally visible and, official. And this right here is the critical point. In this implied and invisible state, the argument is that your assets are technically being managed by public trustees. So what does that mean? It means you don't actually have the final say. It leaves your property wide open to claims or administrative actions that you might find really hard to fight off. Okay, so how do you make that switch? How do you go from being the passenger to being the one in the driver's seat? Well, this framework points to one single ignition key that's supposed to start the engine of your private trust and put you firmly in control. And that key is a T3 number. It's a specific tax ID number. You get it from the CRA here in Canada, or there's an equivalent in other countries. Now, normally you think, okay, that's just for filing taxes, right? But in this system, oh no, it's treated as way more important than that. It's basically seen as the official birth certificate for your private trust. And I love this quote here. The T3 number is not just a formality. It is the trust's passport into the administrative world. It's a perfect way to think about it, right? I mean, without a passport, you can't legally cross any borders. And the argument here is that without this T3 number, your trust can't travel in that administrative world either. It's just invisible, unrecognized. It can't do any official business. So yeah, as you can see, this one little number is doing a ton of heavy lifting here. Sure, it's the accounting key for the tax agencies, but it also creates that clean break from the public default we were just talking about. It becomes the official, recognizable number for any notices. And, maybe most importantly, it's the anchor for the entire trust dossier, which we're going to get into right now. Okay, so we've got our ignition key. Now it's time to actually build the vehicle. And this is what the source material calls the dossier. But don't just think of it as a folder full of papers. No. It's framed as your complete administrative toolkit. And this is a really important distinction they make. A stack of papers is just static. It just sits there. But a living ledger, that's what they call this, is supposed to be dynamic. It's a system you're meant to use, to send notices, to make claims, to engage with official bodies like courts or insurers. And every single action gets recorded and linked together. So here are the 4 core components you need to build this dossier. Step 1, you get that T3 number we talked about. That's the foundation. Step 2, you draft the Trust Indenture. You can think of this as the constitution for your trust. It lays out all the rules. Third, there's the claim of the live, which is a document that asserts your standing. And finally, you prepare a commercial lien, something like a PPSA or a UCC filing, which basically puts your trust's interest in its own assets on the public record for everyone to see. And here's the magic of how it all ties together. That T3 number, it acts like a unique serial number that gets stamped on every single piece of your dossier. So what that does is it makes sure that whether you're looking at the trust's founding document, a commercial filing, or even a report to the tax agency, it all points back to one single, unified, and officially recognized thing. So you've built your administrative toolkit. Now what? Well, the next phase is all about putting that dossier to work. It's about taking very specific actions to get your trust officially on the record. And as you can see from this timeline, this isn't just a one-and-done thing. It's a process. You draft the dossier, then you file your notices, and then comes this really key step they call conveying the claim. This is basically you formally notifying the world about your trust, using things like registered mail for direct notices, and even putting ads in the newspaper for public notice. The key is that every single one of these actions is logged in your ledger, creating this perfect, unbroken chain of evidence before you ever go to engage with anyone else. And the whole point of this entire process, the end goal, is to get what's called a perfected administrative claim. Now, perfected is a legal-sounding word, but it just means that your claim is complete, it's public, and crucially, it's gone undisputed. And once you have that, it gives your trust the standing it needs to interact with official bodies, like your local government or an insurance agency, not as just some person, but as a formal entity with a very clear publicly recorded position. Okay, so you've gotten the key, you've built the dossier, and you've put it on the record. You've done all this administrative heavy lifting. So, what's the payoff? What are the actual benefits supposed to be? Let's take a look. Really, when you boil it all down, the benefits are all about a transformation. The goal is to take your trust from being invisible and put it on the map, making it officially recognized. The idea is that this stops other people from managing your assets by default. It opens the door for commercial stuff, like opening a bank account in the trust's name, and it gives it that official standing it needs to actually protect its property. It's really about moving from a defensive position to an offensive one. So when you look at the whole thing, this entire framework is really a challenge, isn't it? It challenges our basic assumptions about ownership. It lays out this one very specific, very administrative path to taking back control. And it leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about. What does true administrative control over your own world really look like?